So here it is. This is how it came from Japan. It's got some parts on it already. Be pulling this turbo off. The header tank's damaged. The oil pan got smashed in shipping, so we're going to replace that. But it has a 4-to-1 header. Probably not going to run that. I'd prefer to run an equal length. So I'll see about selling that guy. But there it is. Send it, 2-liter AVCS. Alright, so first thing to do with the new motor, this is as it came from Japan land. What I'm going to do is to strip this guy down and get everything off it that we're not going to run. And then also some of the damaged stuff, the oil pan and this. So that's what I'm going to do here, is just start stripping this thing. One green bracket of death removed. We call them green brackets of death because they're green and they suck to take off, especially in the car. Not so bad out of the car, but in the car they're a pain. Definitely don't want the stock inlet. Stock turbo inlet looks pretty torn already in here. It's interesting, some of these parts have been taken off before. Not necessarily what you want when you're getting a new motor. When you got a used motor, it's nice if they've been stock their whole life. But take what you can get. Pro tip here on the turbo inlets come out easier if they don't have the recirc hose in them. It's kind of a pain to get out in some cases. Oh, it's coming. Exactly how I wanted it to. So you kind of just pry that little plastic piece out and it just pops on out. More parts for sale. Those blow-off valves are worth about 30 bucks. Pretty standard price on them. Sometimes you get a little bit more, but we'll hopefully get 30 for it. I'm not actually running power steering, so I should just pull that off. But we'll see. I might end up doing a power steering conversion on this one. I don't know yet. Oh, let me snip off this top guy since we're not running it either. Not sure where my good snips went. There they are. When removing stock inlets, just cut those off because you're never putting them back on the car. And out it comes. See, this one was looking pretty haggard, especially on the end there. It wasn't actually punctured yet, but it would have been before long. Those definitely are parts we're after. Turbo looks okay. Feels decent. Yeah, it's VF. What is that? VF30. Yeah, VF30. I believe that's a ball bearing turbo. Should be worth some money on the old interwebs. That's about what I'm going to take off the top for now. I'm probably not going to run any of these accessories. I mean, obviously I'll have an alternator, but I'm not sure on the. Definitely no AC. That's an absolutely no. But as far as the power steering, I haven't decided yet. This one's been open for too long. I'm sure the pump is bad. All right, one thing that's important, I got the motor kind of torn down. It's always good to inspect the pickup. There's a little bit of silicone on it. You can see it right in the middle there. And the rest of that's just old oil that's been sitting for a long time. But a tiny bit of silicone, a little bit more silicone. This motor has been apart, it appears. But like looking in the oil pan, that's just like greasy, gross, watery oil from condensation from it sitting. But I don't see any glitter, and that's what's super important when you're looking at an old motor. If you see glitter in the pan, it's no good. This pan's damaged, which is also another reason for that concern. So I've got another oil pan here. That's an STI pan, so it'll let me run the equal length headers that I want to run instead of the unequal length Tomei headers that are coming off it. I'm also probably going to replace this pickup. Going to see if I can get a Killer B pickup, just because these are pretty notorious for cracking. Right in here, there's a braze, and then there's another braze there, and they like to crack on that, and that'll do some serious damage really fast. Just for the sake of, checking stuff out, I'm probably going to pull this baffle out and just inspect the rods and make sure that everything looks good. But I'm expecting it should look pretty good. Alright, so I got this torn down. I wanted to look and see about cams, and the JDM cams are a little bit different than the US cams. They've got a little bit thinner notches on the back there. I also wanted to take a look at the bores, so I took the spark plugs out and put a camera down in there. It is stock head bolts still, so I might address that before putting it back together, just because all I would have to do is take the timing belt off, which I plan on doing anyway. It's got a little bit of funny wear on it, so I'm going to do a new timing belt. The rear timing cover cracked here at some point. Looks like they marked it, the junkyard people, so they knew about it. Let's see, so if I do a new timing belt, that means the belt's coming off. It means the cams will come out easy. When the cams are out, I think I could just do head studs, kind of the way the Evo guys do them, and that's where you basically just do one at a time. Take one out, put a stud in, torque it to like 30 foot-pounds, do the next one in the sequence that you normally would torque. And then once they're all in, you just continue torquing the head, and that way it doesn't shift the head gasket or anything. I could just pull the heads and do head gaskets, but they're probably not necessary. Now you will see I flipped the manifold around, just kind of mocking things up to see how I want to end up running this, and I might run it reverse manifold. I have these nice thick phenolic spacers that were some takeoffs from another car. So the turbo inlet is going to come in through here. Now the downside to flipping the manifold is this big guy right here is kind of right in the way of the turbo inlet, whereas if I flip it back around, it'll be this side, which is a little bit more open. It's got this one hole here. I also did want to run stock fuel rails if possible, so I took the fuel lines off, the stuff that goes underneath the manifold, and I just bolted the rails back on for now. So I took all this junk out, but it looks like they got tweaked at some point, because like they're pretty bent here, pretty tight, a lot tighter radius than what they normally are, and I believe they're normally a little flatter to the bottom. Maybe not a lot, but the downside is this one comes back right where I want my turbo inlet, so I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to go ahead and set the turbo on and see how the turbo sits. Probably just bolt the old header that I'm not going to use back onto it for a minute, set the turbo on it, and see how the inlet comes through. I do want to run an actual 3-inch metal inlet, probably aluminum, instead of a silicone inlet or the 2.4-inch inlet, which it is going to have a 2.4-inch turbo for now. I had to pull the water pipes out. The water pipe was damaged that comes up here, so I'm going to have to, let's see if I can find that guy. It's right here. You can see right there. Let's focus on it. It got pretty smashed which is kind of sad. As far as turbos go, got this Tomioka Racing. This is a pretty basic turbo. This is just it's a TD06-20g, and it's kind of a big 20g turbo. Nothing in there. Which, you know, it's kind of an older technology. It's nothing fancy, nothing billet and new. I'm gonna get this out of the box, but it's nothing billet and new and fancy. But it is an inexpensive way to make, with the right fuel and the right mods, you know, over 400 horsepower. So I think if we can get this thing making about 450 to the wheels, it should be a blast. Plenty fast, should run low 10s at the drag strip. It's a very lightweight car, so 450 horse through 2,200 pound car is good for some serious mile an hour and some serious ET. Injectors, my good friends, shameless product plug at Fuel Injector Clinic. These are the 1650s. I chose these. They're a little bit big for my power goal, but if I decide to run methanol, this is an all stainless injector, so it's not going to have problems with methanol fuel, and it should be enough fuel out of a single set of 1650s to support, you know, 500-ish horsepower or so, 550 or so. All right, so here she is, the big Mamma Jamma TD06-20g. Went ahead and just bolted the up pipe on. I don't have the oil pan on and stuff, so I just separated the up pipe, but that'll at least give me an idea of where things are going to end up. So without dropping this one-handed here, I'm going to go ahead and set this turbo on. Looks like things in the way here. Should probably get a camera mount for this, a tripod for this task. So typical things, the bottom water pipe is hitting the bracket there. That's super common. Usually you can just loosen it up on this side and kind of pivot it a little bit. And then the turbo outlet is hitting this bracket. So I'm just going to take that bracket off for now. Definitely not necessary for what we're doing at the moment. A couple things to note. The fuel lines do clear down in there. So that's ideal. And it looks like I won't have a problem with the inlet. Now the end of the fuel line, I'll probably either reform this, I don't know, I might try to find another set of rails that either are slightly different or not as tweaked, because I do need to make about 500 horsepower through the rails. And that's a topic. A lot of people think that the fuel rails are the limitation. What's actually the limitation on the fuel system on these cars? Well, the fuel rails become a limitation at a certain point, I should correct. But at 500 horsepower, even on ethanol, you can run stock fuel rails without having a starved injector, but not through a single 5/16 orifice. What you have to do is you have to run them in parallel. So your fuel feed is going to come up somewhere usually into the back of the motor and then split. And one way is going to go into one rail and the other way is going to go into the other rail. And then they come out of the rail. In this case, it comes back down here, but this one comes out the top up here. And you're going to wire those back together into your fuel pressure regulator. A lot of regulators have two pressure ports for this very reason. And then you run the return back to the engine. What that's going to do is basically mean that your 5/8, sorry, not 5/8, that'd be huge. Your 5/16 feed is only actually feeding two injectors. So you've got two injectors on a 5/16 and two injectors on a 5/16. That way they're going to be equal. All right, I went ahead and took that bracket off, and here's our turbo. And let's drop that guy. Look at that fitment. I also, because I had it off again, I went ahead and moved that water pipe, and you can see now there is a bajillimeter. See if I can get it to focus in there. There is an air gap. You could maybe fit a business card through that. What I'll probably do is bend this pipe just a tad to give that a little bit more room. Whenever you have two metal objects touching that aren't securely fastened together, that have any potential for vibration of metal on metal, what happens is your knock sensor, which is hanging out over here on these Subarus, so I don't know why my focus freaked out, your knock sensor down here starts picking up that noise, and it says, oh, there is something going on. And when it thinks there's something going on, it starts to pull ignition timing out. Missing a few bolts. This one is actually stripped out. I'm going to have to helicoil that or something. But when your knock sensor sees vibration, it thinks that there's an engine noise that's not supposed to be there. And so it'll start to pull ignition timing. So you can get vibrations anytime you have anything that's metal touching metal that's not securely fastened with a bolt. So this is not securely fastened. Now, if I had not adjusted it and rammed these guys down, it probably would have been a tight enough squeeze that it wouldn't vibrate and cause problems. But that's just not a risk that I really want to take. Look at that. Look at the size of that. It goes way up into the housing. They had to cut into there. That's not even a big housing. This is only an 8 centimeter. I wish it was a 10. Maybe down the road we'll switch to a cooler 16 or a cooler 20G with a 10 centimeter back half and a 3-inch inlet. I think Blausch makes one. Using the Tomioka Racing, really good friends with that company. You know, we sell a lot of their parts. We test a lot of turbos for them too. Maybe down the road I'll get to test something cool that they make. So down now, I just put a used gasket in there. No sense in crushing a brand new gasket. They do ship them with new gaskets, but again, I don't want to crush a new gasket and then have it not work. You know, you do definitely want a gasket in there when you're mocking stuff up. It may only be a 1/16 of an inch, but when your clearances are so tight here, a 1/16 of an inch is, you know, it can be a mile. And now for the next piece of the proverbial puzzle. This is an agency power coupler. The reason why I use their coupler is because it's funny. I mean, that is a weird shape. It goes from 2.4, I think, to, it feels just shy of 3 to me. I put a 3-inch pipe on it earlier and it did not particularly like it. So I don't want to run the agency power 3-inch inlet. I would run it, I've considered running it, but the problem with it is that it's got all of the various ports on it for evap and recirc and all of that I just don't need. Being that we're not running any of that stuff, it's going to be a standalone engine management. It's a race car, so emissions aren't an issue. Now on a street car, it's a good idea, so definitely run it, but I can make a little bit cleaner look. So now there we go. So we're going to clock that down just a hair. Let's see if maybe I can get it to twist. There we go. So again, I've got that fuel outlet there. I'll probably have to bend that down or do something else with the rails. But there's 3 inches. Looks like it's going to come through just fine. I was thinking if I need to, I could cut that off there. But again, look over there. It doesn't have it. I think I'm just going to bite the bullet and not rotate this manifold. That'll also make it easier to clear the hood and whatnot. Transient response be damned. So there's that turbo in there. Look at that Tomioka Racing. Shoot your boy. Gonna take a quick time out for a word from my life sponsor. Just kidding, I don't have any sponsors. This is what keeps me going every day. Sugar-free rock stars and tacos. That's all you really need to build Subarus. All right, I got my 3-inch pipe. Whoa, that's a big, I can't even get that whole thing on camera. Bose Suco intake, but sadly, it's not going to fit, at least not with that nipple on it. So, all right, so there's a right way to do things, and then there's the my way to do things. I got my sweet little saw here. And I'm going to just, put it right there, and we're just going to cut her. See, let's make sure we're not going to hit anything back there. Nope, looks good, looks good. All right, here we go. I put a towel in the turbo, because, you don't want to be cutting your turbo. Voila. Let's see if we can, just for giggles, let's see if we can get that to go onto the turbo now. Because I can rubberize this pipe or do something else to make it fit a little bit, or not rattle later on, if needed. It ends up becoming rattly. So, I mean, there's the angle that it likes. That's a full 3-inch pipe through there. Obviously, that's not the intake I'm going to be running. I was just looking for a piece of 3-inch pipe to mock up with. I feel like it's kind of kicked. It's kicked a little bit that way, and it can't come back at all anymore because of this guy. Well, I decided I wanted to be able to run it backwards. I might not end up that way depending on how things fit under the hood, but at least I have the option. So these are just rough cut off. When I go to repaint the manifold, I'll get a file out and shave them good and flush and make it pretty. But there it is, just kind of cut down and over. I really like that saw. It's the first time I've really gotten to use it. It's one of those impulse purchases. Yeah, I'll put this thing back on and see if that fits better. All right, look at that. Fits like a glove. See, it's much tighter up against the housing here. It's straight in to the turbo now. Less kink on the end. Before it was kind of kinking. This right here was kind of pinched in a little bit. So this should fit a lot better. So what we're going to do is I'll probably have to buy an aluminum mandrel. Although it's going to need to be a pretty tight bend. I might do it out of stainless. This is a stainless pipe. So if I cut it here, I might be able to run, because I do want to run the intake down over to here. It's just, the other nice thing is if in the future I go with a big 3-inch inlet, they make this same coupler designed for 3-inch as well. So I could just run that if I do get a bigger turbo. So build something once, that way it works forever. Beautiful. All right, a little bit more compact. Found this nice 3-inch U-bend. This would actually potentially work out really well. I'd probably cut somewhere in here and then actually twist the radius of that to make the pipe come out and then down, tuck it away into the fender. And then I'm going to trim the back end, probably about that distance back, so that it'll be a little tighter up against the TGV housing. But I think that U-bend will work perfect. It's too bad I'm not actually a fabricator, or else I would, I guess I could cut and mock it up. But I think I'll probably wait till it's in the car, being how easy it is to get that in there. Wait till the motor's dropped in the car to actually build the intake. That way I don't accidentally end up with any clearance issues to the radiator, because the radiator is going to be pretty close here. Like this right here, how it is, would definitely hit, just from what my brain tells me where things are at. But I can get this sucked in a good 3 inches. Basically have it contact right here, so all that's going to be further back. That's going to work out great. I might see if I can get one of these in aluminum. This is stainless. Stainless is nice because it's strong, but it's heavy. There's no reason to run something so heavy, especially for an intake.